Hey Algebra. So here we are, day 2 of our online learning where we're going to be just doing a review of our Chapter 7 test. There were a few concepts that I just felt like we needed to go over before moving on to Chapter 8. There's some concepts that you did really well on and then I'm not going to review, but I will review a few of them, and then after that I'm going to have you do a little homework assignment on those reviewed concepts. And remember again that the homework assignment goes in as participation points. I'll grade it like normal, but you'll get a star up at the top that says, that basically lets you know that it went in as participation points. And then starting Monday, we'll have a PowerPoint ready with Chapter 8, and we'll walk through all of Chapter 8 together online. So let's get started, and let me pull up my PowerPoint here for a review on Chapter 8. So I'm gonna go to this slide even though I'm not going to be recording in here, and get my handy dandy little pen here so that we can go through our review concepts of Chapter 8. I'm going to do different pen colors here and there, so make it a little bit more fun. So here we go. We have n to the negative third power, and it says that n equals -5. Now, if you want to take a moment and you want to pause the video and you want to try and solve all these on your own first, I highly recommend that, because then we can go back and we can look and see, oh, okay, well, how did I solve this? Did I get it correct? Did I not? So if you want, take a minute and pause the video now, but I'm going to walk through each one of these with you. Okay, so here we have n to the negative third power. Remember, negative exponents always become fractions, and then they become positive exponents. We do not want any negative exponents anymore. So that means we're going to automatically put it in as a fraction, and it's going to be 1 over n to the third power. Now we can deal with this right here where it says n is equal to -5. So remember, when I have n is equal to -5, so this whole thing is what n equals. That means I need to put it in parentheses because it has a negative with it. The n itself isn't negative over here. This n is negative. The number is negative. So this is really like 1 over -5 times -5 times -5. And then we know that a -5 times -5 is positive 25, times a -5, again, is a negative, and it's 125. So our fraction then is -125. And I know some people missed, I think it must have been squared on the test because they put a negative and there shouldn't have been a negative there. So now I'm going to go down and switch colors here to do this one. We have 8 times f to the -4th times g to the 0 power. Now remember that this is all right now there. It's like it's a big fraction. Anytime you see anything, it's like it's always over 1. So remember, we start out with our fraction bar here, and we look at each term. We're going to look at 8 first. 8 itself is over 1, so it's positive, so it's going to stay on the top. F to the -4th, that's a negative exponent like what we saw here, which then it means it gets turned into a fraction. So f to the -4th moves to the denominator and becomes f to the 4th. Now we have g to the 0 power. G to the 0 power is always 1. So you could multiply it by 1, but you really don't need to. Your answer then is just 8 divided by f to the 4th. So that right there is your answer. Now, let's do this one. This one is 14 minus a to the 0 power b to the 2nd power to the -3rd power. And it's saying that a is equal to -2 and b is equal to 4. So what we're going to do first is we have to think PEMDAS in this. Everything we kind of have to think PEMDAS. Oh, well, I know that With PEMDAS, I need to solve what's in parentheses first, and then I need to work on exponents. So this becomes 14 minus, and we are going to plug in our numbers here. Now we know that any number, whether it be a to the 0 power or negative 2 to the 0 power, is always 1. It's always going to be a positive 1. So I'm just going to say it's 14 minus 1, and then we're going to plug in 4 for b, which then becomes 4 squared. All of that to the negative third power. So again, I'm going to solve what's in parentheses first, and remember that there's an exponent within the parentheses. So I'm going to do 14 minus a negative. It's, 14 minus, and then it's 1 times 4 squared. 4 squared is 16 times 1 is 16. And all of that still to the negative third power. So then I'm going to continue to solve what's in parentheses first. This is 14 minus 16, which becomes negative 2 to the negative third power. Then this now looks very similar to this up here, only we don't have our number in yet. So, or up here was a variable, down here's the number. So this now becomes 1 over negative 2 to the positive third power. And it looks again similar to up here, where we're going to have a negative 2 times a negative 2 times a negative 2. So my answer is going to be positive. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So we have a negative 1/8 power. Okay. So now to this next one. This one here, when we have a to the third power times b to the sixth power, how you solve this is you have to take a to the third power to the sixth power times b to the sixth power to the sixth power. We need to break it up like that, because when on the test I noticed that we were forgetting about a to the third. We were leaving it alone and just bringing our answer as a to the third power, and that's not how it works. Anything, because it's got these parentheses here, that means that it's included. So that means this a to the third also has to go to the sixth power as well. So we have a to the 3 times 6 power times b to the 6 times 6 power. So we have a to the 18th power and b to the 36th power. So if you, where'd that go? Oh, well, let's do that again. I think I might have clicked the erase button on accident. So, but we can start right back up where we left off here. Okay, so we have a to the third times the sixth power times b to the sixth power. So that becomes a to the 18th and b to the 36th power. And that right there is your answer, because you need to multiply both of these. So this to the third power to the sixth power, and then b to the sixth to the sixth power. Okay, so now we come over here to this one, and I'm going to use this pretty purple color right here, and we have a fraction to a negative exponent. When we have a fraction to a negative exponent, hopefully you remembered that we flip it. So it no longer becomes 4s divided by 3t, it becomes 3t over 4s squared, because now it's a positive exponent now that we flipped it, times 2s over 6t squared. We don't need to flip that one because this one's a positive exponent here. Now we need to solve this out. When we solve this out, it's the same principle as up here, where 3 is squared and t is squared, and 4 is squared and s is squared, and 2 is squared, s is squared, 6 is squared, t is squared. So we need to square all of it. So it becomes really 3 squared, t squared over 4 squared, s squared times 2 squared s squared and 6 squared t squared. So we need to solve that out again. So this becomes 9t squared over 16s squared. Let me fix that. Becomes 16s squared times 4s squared over 36t squared. So now I'm going to rewrite this down here because I'm going to show you two different ways to solve it. Okay, so if we solve it this first way, we can think back to fractions. When we're multiplying fractions, this is multiplying, we just multiply them straight across. So this becomes 36t squared s squared, and this actually becomes 576 t squared s squared. So now we can actually do some canceling here because we've got a t squared on the top and the bottom and s squared on the top and the bottom. We can cancel those out. And then if you remember over here, the numerator 576 was 36 times 16. So we know that this goes in 36 goes into 576 16 times. So your answer would be 1/16. I'm making a mess drawing here, so I'll erase what I don't need. Your answer then becomes 1/16. So let me show you over here how I would do that using a different color. So let's do yellow. Hopefully it shows up. So we can say, okay, let's look, this way might be easier. So let's do this. 4 goes into 16 4 times. 4 times 4 is 16. So 4 becomes 1, goes into 16. We know s squared and s squared are the same, so we can cancel that out. It's just 1 and 1. Now over here we've got t squared and t squared, also then just becomes 1 and 1. And 9 goes into 36 4 times. So now if we multiply 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, that just becomes 1. And 4 times 1 times 4 times 1 is 16. And we get our answer. So both ways there come out to be the same way, whether you want to multiply it straight across or whether you want to cross cancel. So now let's go to a different page and I'm going to work some different types of problems. I'm going to work some of the cube root problems, the cube root, the square root of different numbers. The first one we're going to look at here is 43 cubed, but to the cube root. So remember, when we have a cube root here and we have an exponent in here, whether it's a variable or a number like 43, we need to just divide. We need to divide the exponent by the cube root. So this becomes 43 to the third divided by 3, which becomes 43 to the first power, which just equals 43. Okay, so let's look at another one. We have the square root of 25 times y to the 8th power. Now, when there is no number here, it's just a 2 because it's being the squared root of that. So we can take the square root of 25 to the square root of y to the 8th, and then we can solve that problem. So we have the square root of 25, which is 5, and then this becomes y to the 8th divided by 2, which equals 5 times y to the 4th power. Okay, let's look at another one. We're going to be looking at the 5th root here of 3 to the 5th power times t to the 10th power. 10th power. Again, we're going to just divide like what we did, what we have been doing. So this becomes 3 to the 5th divided by 5, and then t times 10 divided by fifth power, which then becomes, this is 3 to the first power, so it's just 3, and this becomes t squared. So I think on the test you saw a square root of, I don't know, I think I'm gonna say y to the second, x to the fourth, or something along those lines. This just, again, would divide. So hopefully by now, looking at up here, you would know that it was yx squared, because we're going to divide 2 by 2, which is just 1, and 4 by 2, which is 2. So that's the answer there. For the most part, you guys did really well on the a plus b squared, the a minus b squared, anything with FOIL, you guys did really well on. So excellent job. This is really going to be pivotal for chapter 8. This whole thing right here. You need it for chapter 8. Okay. There's one more thing I want to go over in this video, and then you'll have a chance to do your homework. It's when we subtract polynomials. 2b squared minus 4b cubed, oh, all that was in parentheses, minus 6b cubed plus 8b squared. One thing we need to remember when we have a negative, that it either gets distributed to these terms or to the ones in the second parentheses. First parentheses stays the same. So we can drop the parentheses at this point, and we can just rewrite what's in the top here. 2b squared minus 4b cubed. Then really you could drop all of this and then change the sign of these. So that means, or distribute the negative. This is a positive, so it's now going to become a negative. And this is a positive, so it's now going to become a negative. And I'm going to highlight over here, now we can add up our like terms. So we have 2b squared, and we have a negative 8b squared. Remember to include the sign. Do not forget to include the negative, because then that's how you know whether or not you're going to add or subtract it. Then we have 4b cubed and a negative 6b cubed. So now we can then add our like terms. So we have 2 minus 8, which is a negative 6b squared, and we have negative 4 minus 6, which becomes a negative 10b cubed. And we cannot combine those anymore because one's squared, one's cubed, and that is the answer. So the test itself it should have been very straightforward if you had studied. There were a lot of different concepts within this chapter, and almost all of them you were tested on the test itself. So I felt like it was really straightforward. I felt like it was really straightforward, but I understand that some of you didn't do so well. So that's why I'm doing this review, because I want you to feel confident in it. I want you to feel like you are, like you can move on to chapter 8 and feel successful about it. So go now, do the homework. Again, I'll correct it like normal, but it is going to be just a participation grade. If we need more help and stuff, just let me know. I can upload videos. If you're like, Mrs. Combs, I have no idea how to do this problem, I can upload a video specifically showing you how to do that one. But hopefully for now that made more sense. It kind of hopefully connected more dots on the test, and I look forward to seeing you guys later on.